The morning sun cast golden rays across the weathered wooden pier of Sea Haven, a small coastal town that had seen better days. Margaret Thompson wiped down the sticky counter of her ice cream parlor for the third time that morning, her calloused hands moving in practice circles. The Sweet Breeze ice cream parlor had been her family's business for 47 years, passed down from her grandfather, who had built it with his own hands after returning from war. The parlor sat precariously close to the water's edge, its faded blue paint peeling from years of salt spray and harsh winters. Through the large front windows, Margaret could see the endless stretch of gray-blue ocean that both sustained and challenged their small community. The morning was unusually quiet, with only the sound of seagulls and the gentle lapping of waves against the wooden posts below. Margaret's daughter Sarah emerged from the back room, her apron already stained with chocolate sauce despite the early hour. At 28, Sarah had reluctantly returned to help with the family business after her dreams of city life had crumbled along with her marriage. She carried a tray of freshly made waffle cones, their sweet aroma filling the small space. The parlor itself was a testament to simpler times. Mismatched wooden tables and chairs filled the cramped interior, each piece telling its own story of countless summer visitors and local families. The walls were covered with faded photographs of the town's history, yellowed newspaper clippings, and thank you notes from visitors who had found joy in Margaret's homemade ice cream recipes. Behind a glass counter sat 12 flavors of ice cream, each made fresh daily in the tiny kitchen that barely qualified as such. Margaret took pride in her simple but perfect flavors: vanilla bean, chocolate fudge, strawberry cream, mint chip, and seasonal specialties that changed with the local harvest. There was no fancy equipment, no modern marketing, just honest ice cream made with local cream and Margaret's secret touch of love. The town of Sea Haven had struggled in recent years. The fishing industry that once sustained hundreds of families had dwindled to a handful of boats. Young people left for opportunities in larger cities, leaving behind an aging population and empty storefronts along the main street. The ice cream parlor was one of only 6 businesses still operating year-round, and even Margaret sometimes wondered how much longer she could hold on. Thomas, Margaret's husband of 32 years, pushed through the front door, carrying a stack of newspapers. His weathered face bore the marks of a lifetime spent outdoors, first as a fisherman and now as the town's unofficial handyman. He dropped the papers on the counter with more force than usual, causing Margaret to look up from her cleaning. The headline on the front page of the regional newspaper made Margaret's heart skip. In bold letters, it announced that members of the royal family will be making an official visit to their county as part of a tour highlighting small coastal communities affected by economic changes. The article mentioned several towns, including Sea Haven, though it gave no specific details about when or where the royals might visit. Sarah leaned over to read the article, her eyes widening as she absorbed the information. The possibility of royal visitors seemed as distant and unlikely as winning the lottery. Yet there it was, printed in black and white, suggesting that their forgotten little town might soon find itself in the spotlight. Margaret's mind raced with possibilities and concerns. The parlor was clean and functional, but it was hardly the type of establishment she imagined royalty would visit. The floor creaked in 3 different places, the paint was peeling, and the ancient cash register sometimes refused to open without a firm bang on its side. Yet the ice cream was exceptional, and Margaret had never served anything she wasn't proud of. Thomas sensed his wife's anxiety and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. He had seen Margaret weather many storms, both literal and figurative, and he knew she possessed a strength that often surprised even herself. The possibility of royal visitors was daunting, but it was also an opportunity that might never come again. The morning continued quietly, with only Mrs. Henderson stopping by for her daily vanilla cone, and young Billy Fletcher begging for free samples until Margaret finally gave him a small cup of chocolate chip. These were the regular rhythms of their life, simple interactions that had remained unchanged for years. As the day progressed, Word of the newspaper article began to spread through the town's efficient gossip network. By afternoon, several neighbors had stopped by to discuss the possibilities and share their own hopes and concerns about a potential royal visit. Everyone agreed it would be wonderful for the town, but nobody quite knew what it might mean for their quiet way of life. Margaret found herself torn between excitement and worry. A royal visit could bring attention to their struggling town, potentially attracting new visitors and helping local businesses survive. But it could also expose their humble establishment to scrutiny from people who might not understand the simple charm of a family-run ice cream parlor. That evening, as Margaret locked up the parlor, she stood for a moment looking out at the darkening ocean. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, reflecting off the water in shimmering bands of color. This view had comforted her through difficult times and celebrated with her during moments of joy. She thought about her grandfather, who had built this parlor with dreams of serving the best ice cream on the coast. He had succeeded, though perhaps not in the way he had originally imagined. The Sweet Breeze had never been glamorous or profitable, but it had been a gathering place for the community, a source of simple pleasure for thousands of visitors, and a legacy that Margaret had carefully maintained. Sarah joined her mother at the window, and together they watched the last light fade from the sky. Both women were thinking about the same thing, though neither spoke their thoughts aloud. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities, and they would face whatever came with the same quiet determination that had sustained their family for generations. The waves continued their eternal rhythm against the pier, carrying with them the promise of change and the comfort of continuity. In the distance, a fishing boat's lights twinkled as it made its way home, a reminder that life in Sea Haven continued at its own pace, regardless of what the outside world might bring to their door. 3 weeks after the newspaper article appeared, Margaret was knee-deep in her morning routine when the telephone rang with an urgency that made her heart race. The caller identified himself as James Morrison from the Royal Household's advance team, and his crisp, professional voice carried news that would change everything for the Sweet Breeze ice cream parlor. The royal family had indeed selected Sea Haven for their coastal community visit, and specifically, they wanted to stop at Margaret's establishment. The visit would take place in exactly 10 days, giving the small business owner barely enough time to process the magnitude of what was happening, let alone prepare adequately for such an extraordinary event. Margaret's hands trembled as she scribbled notes on the back of a napkin, trying to capture every detail that James Morrison rattled off with practiced efficiency. Security protocols, timing requirements, media arrangements, and dietary considerations filled her makeshift notepad until she realized she was writing over her own words in a panic-induced haze. Sarah emerged from the back room at the sound of her mother's increasingly high-pitched responses to the caller, and quickly understood that something monumental was occurring. She watched Margaret's face cycle through expressions of disbelief, terror, excitement, and determination in rapid succession, each emotion fighting for dominance over her usually composed features. The advance team would arrive in 3 days to conduct security sweeps and coordinate with local authorities. The visit itself would be informal, designed to showcase the authentic character of small coastal businesses that represented the backbone of Britain's seaside communities. The royals wanted to experience genuine local flavor, not an artificially polished presentation created specifically for their arrival. After Margaret hung up the phone, she and Sarah sat in stunned silence for several minutes, the weight of the news settling around them like morning fog. The parlor suddenly felt both exactly the same and completely transformed, as if they were seeing their familiar surroundings through entirely different eyes. Thomas arrived an hour later to find both women frantically cleaning areas that were already spotless, their nervous energy channeled into the familiar comfort of physical work. When they explained the situation, Thomas's reaction was characteristically calm and practical. He immediately began making a mental list of small repairs and improvements that could be accomplished within their limited time frame and budget. The news spread through Sea Haven faster than a summer storm. By afternoon, the entire town was buzzing with excitement and activity. Mayor Davidson called an emergency meeting to coordinate the community's response, and suddenly, everyone had opinions about paint colors, flower arrangements, and the proper way to address royalty. Margaret found herself at the center of attention in a way that felt both thrilling and overwhelming. Neighbors who had barely spoken to her in months were offering assistance, advice, and congratulations with equal enthusiasm. Mrs. Henderson insisted on sharing her grandmother's recipe for royal-worthy scones, while young Billy Fletcher appointed himself as the parlor's unofficial security guard. The local newspaper sent a reporter to interview Margaret, and she discovered that talking to the press was far more difficult than she had imagined. Every question seemed loaded with potential for misunderstanding, and she found herself second-guessing responses that should have been simple and straightforward. That evening, Margaret lay awake staring at the ceiling while Thomas snored peacefully beside her. Her mind raced through endless scenarios of things that could go wrong. What if the ice cream machine broke down? What if she said something inappropriate? What if the royals didn't like her flavors? What if the whole event was a disaster that embarrassed not just her family, but the entire town? The next morning brought James Morrison and his advance team, a group of serious-looking individuals who transformed the parlor into something resembling a crime scene investigation. They measured distances, tested sight lines, and spoke into small devices using codes that Margaret couldn't begin to understand. Despite their professional demeanor, the advance team members were surprisingly friendly and normal when not discussing security protocols. James Morrison even complimented Margaret's strawberry ice cream, suggesting that the royal family would genuinely enjoy experiencing her authentic offerings. His reassurance helped calm some of her anxieties, though new worries immediately rushed in to fill the vacant space. The team's presence attracted curious onlookers throughout the day, transforming the usually quiet street into something resembling a small festival. Children pressed their faces against windows, adults lingered longer than necessary during routine errands, and everyone seemed to have developed a sudden craving for ice cream. Margaret noticed that the increased attention was already affecting her daily routine. Simple tasks became complicated when performed under the watchful eyes of neighbors and strangers who had suddenly developed intense interest in her every movement. She began to understand why famous people often seemed stressed and guarded in public. Sarah proved invaluable during this chaotic period, managing the regular customers while Margaret dealt with the constant stream of visitors, reporters, and well-meaning advisors who appeared throughout the day. Her daughter's natural grace under pressure surprised Margaret, who realized that Sarah had developed skills and confidence during her time away from Sea Haven. The advance team's security requirements necessitated some changes to the parlor's usual operation. Certain tables would need to be moved, the front entrance would require modification to accommodate security personnel, and the kitchen would need to be temporarily reorganized to ensure clear sight lines throughout the establishment. Thomas approached these challenges with the methodical problem-solving skills he had developed over decades of fixing whatever needed fixing around town. He enlisted help from several neighbors, and soon the parlor was bustling with activity as volunteers painted, repaired, and reorganized under his careful supervision. Margaret wrestled with conflicting emotions as she watched her familiar parlor transform. The changes were subtle and respectful, but they altered the intimate atmosphere that had always defined the Sweet Breeze. She found herself mourning the loss of perfect ordinariness while simultaneously feeling grateful for the opportunity to share her life's work with such distinguished visitors. The menu became another source of anxiety and excitement. Margaret's usual 12 flavors would be supplemented by 3 special creations developed specifically for the royal visit. She spent hours testing combinations and adjusting recipes, determined to create something memorable without abandoning the simple excellence that had sustained her business for decades. Evening brought a town meeting where Mayor Davidson attempted to coordinate Sea Haven's response to the unprecedented attention. The discussion revealed both the best and worst of small-town dynamics, as neighbors alternated between generous cooperation and petty territorial disputes over who would stand where during the visit. Margaret left the meeting feeling more overwhelmed than when she had arrived. The royal visit had grown from a simple stop at her ice cream parlor into a community-wide event with implications and complications she had never anticipated. She wondered if she had been naive to think that hosting royalty could be approached with the same straightforward hospitality she offered to every customer. That night, as Margaret again lay awake processing the day's developments, Thomas surprised her with unexpected wisdom. He reminded her that the royals had specifically chosen her parlor because they wanted to experience authentic coastal community life. Her job was not to become something different, but to remain exactly who she had always been. His words provided the perspective Margaret needed to approach the remaining preparation time with renewed confidence. She would clean and organize and prepare, but she would not fundamentally change the character of the Sweet Breeze ice cream parlor. After 47 years of serving honest ice cream with genuine warmth, she was not about to start pretending to be someone else now. The morning of the royal visit dawned crisp and clear, with September's sunshine casting everything in golden light that seemed almost too perfect to be real. Margaret had been awake since 4 o'clock, her nervous energy channeled into baking fresh waffle cones and double-checking every detail of her preparation for what felt like the 100th time. The parlor had been transformed subtly, but significantly over the past week. Fresh paint brightened the exterior without changing its character. New flowers bloomed in window boxes that Thomas had carefully crafted, and every surface gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that spoke of genuine care rather than desperate scrubbing. Sarah arrived early to help with final preparations, her own excitement barely contained beneath a veneer of professional calm. Together, mother and daughter arranged the special ice cream flavors Margaret had created. Coastal berry swirl, made with locally picked blackberries, honey lavender featuring honey from the town's beekeepers, and traditional vanilla bean that represented the parlor's commitment to timeless quality. The security team had established their presence at dawn, transforming the normally sleepy street into something resembling a movie set. Barriers appeared at strategic locations, uniformed officers took positions at various points, and communication equipment created a network of professional activity that both excited and intimidated the gathering crowd. Townspeople began arriving hours before the scheduled visit, claiming spots along the barriers with the enthusiasm of concert-goers waiting for their favorite performer. Mrs. Henderson had brought a folding chair and a thermos of tea, settling in for what she clearly intended to be an all-day event. Young Billy Fletcher appointed himself as crowd entertainer, regaling anyone who would listen with increasingly elaborate theories about royal ice cream preferences. Margaret tried to maintain her normal routine despite the extraordinary circumstances. She served regular customers who had made special trips to witness history, answered questions from reporters who seemed determined to find dramatic angles in her simple story, and attempted to calm her own nerves through the familiar rhythms of scooping ice cream and making change. The advance team had briefed her extensively on protocol, but their instructions seemed to evaporate from her memory whenever she tried to recall specific details. She had practiced her greeting dozens of times, yet now found herself questioning whether she should curtsy, shake hands, or simply smile and speak naturally. Thomas moved through the controlled chaos with his characteristic steady presence, making small adjustments and offering quiet encouragement to his increasingly anxious wife. He had dressed in his best shirt and cleanest work pants, striking the perfect balance between respect for their distinguished visitors and loyalty to his authentic self. At precisely 2 o'clock, the royal convoy appeared at the end of the street, a procession of black vehicles that moved with dignified purpose toward the Sweet Breeze ice cream parlor. The crowd's excitement reached a crescendo as people strained against barriers to catch their first glimpse of the visitors who had traveled from their world of palaces and ceremonies into this small corner of coastal England. Margaret's heart pounded as she watched the lead vehicle stop directly in front of her establishment. Security personnel moved with practiced efficiency, creating a clear pathway from the cars to the parlor entrance. The moment felt both eternal and instantaneous, as if time had decided to move at an entirely different pace than she had ever experienced before. The royal family emerged from their vehicles with the grace and confidence that comes from a lifetime of public appearances, yet there was something refreshingly natural about their demeanor that immediately put Margaret at ease. They looked around with genuine curiosity and pleasure, taking in the scenic coastal setting and the enthusiastic welcome from the assembled townspeople. As they approached the parlor, Margaret found herself moving forward to greet them with instincts that bypassed all her practiced protocols. Her nervous energy transformed into warm hospitality as she welcomed her distinguished guests with the same authentic friendliness she had offered to thousands of visitors over the decades. The royals expressed genuine delight at the parlor's charming atmosphere and authentic coastal character. They asked thoughtful questions about the business's history, Margaret's ice cream recipes, and the challenges facing small coastal communities like Sea Haven. Their interest was clearly sincere rather than performative, and Margaret found herself relaxing into conversation that felt surprisingly natural. Sarah stepped forward to explain the special flavors that had been created for the visit, describing the local ingredients and traditional techniques with knowledge and pride that impressed their distinguished guests. Margaret watched her daughter with amazement, realizing that Sarah possessed communication skills and confidence that had been hidden beneath years of small-town routine. The ice cream tasting became a delightful and formal event as the royals sampled various flavors with evident pleasure and offered genuine compliments on the quality and creativity they encountered. Margaret found herself beaming with pride as her life's work received appreciation from visitors who could have chosen to visit anywhere in the world. The conversation revealed the royals' deep knowledge about the economic challenges facing coastal communities and their genuine concern for small businesses that preserved traditional ways of life. They spoke knowledgeably about fishing industry changes, tourism patterns, and the importance of supporting local enterprises that maintained community character and employment. Margaret shared stories about her grandfather's vision for the parlor, her family's commitment to quality ingredients and traditional methods, and the role that small businesses played in maintaining community identity. She spoke with passion and authenticity that clearly resonated with her visitors, who asked follow-up questions that demonstrated their genuine engagement with her story. The media presence, which Margaret had dreaded, became almost invisible as she focused on the pleasure of sharing her parlor with visitors who genuinely appreciated its unique character. Cameras captured moments of natural interaction and authentic enjoyment rather than staged formality, creating images that would later become cherished mementos for the entire community. Young Billy Fletcher managed to catch the royal attention with his earnest explanation of proper ice cream cone construction techniques, delivering his impromptu lecture with such serious dedication that even the security team struggled to maintain their professional composure. His innocent enthusiasm perfectly embodied the genuine spirit that had attracted the royal family to their community. The townspeople who had gathered to witness the visit found themselves included in conversations and interactions that went far beyond formal protocol. The royals took time to speak with longtime residents, ask about local history, and express appreciation for the community's warm welcome and authentic coastal character. Margaret realized that this extraordinary day was becoming something far more meaningful than she had ever imagined. Rather than feeling like a performance or obligation, the royal visit was becoming a celebration of everything that made Sea Haven special, from its stunning natural setting to its resilient community spirit. As the formal portion of the visit drew toward its conclusion, Margaret felt a mixture of satisfaction and melancholy. The experience had exceeded her wildest hopes, yet she knew that such magical moments were by definition temporary. Soon the visitors would depart, the security barriers would disappear, and life would return to its familiar rhythms. However, she also understood that something fundamental had changed during these precious hours. The royal visit had reminded everyone in Sea Haven of their community's inherent worth and unique character. It had demonstrated that their simple way of life possessed qualities that even distinguished visitors could appreciate and celebrate. As the royal visit continued into its second hour, an unexpected intimacy developed between the distinguished guests and the Sweet Breeze ice cream parlor family. What had begun as a formal stop on an official tour gradually transformed into something resembling a genuine social visit, with conversations flowing naturally beyond the prescribed schedule and protocol boundaries. The younger royal family member expressed particular interest in Sarah's stories about returning to help with the family business after pursuing different dreams in the city. Their discussion about balancing personal ambitions with family responsibilities resonated across the social divide, revealing universal themes that connected their vastly different life experiences. Margaret found herself sharing more personal anecdotes than she had planned, describing the challenges of maintaining a small business through economic downturns, changing tourism patterns, and the gradual exodus of young people from coastal communities. Her visitors listened with genuine attention and asked thoughtful questions that demonstrated their understanding of these complex issues. Thomas, initially overwhelmed by the surreal nature of discussing local fishing conditions with members of the royal family, gradually relaxed into conversations that revealed his deep knowledge of coastal community dynamics and environmental changes. His practical wisdom and understated humor clearly impressed visitors who encountered countless experts but rarely met people with such authentic grassroots understanding. The parlor's modest interior, which Margaret had worried might seem inadequate for such distinguished guests, proved to be perfectly suited for the intimate interactions that developed. The close quarters necessitated friendly informality that broke down barriers more effectively than any elaborate reception hall could have accomplished. Local photographer Janet Mills, who had covered community events for the regional newspaper for 30 years, captured extraordinary images of genuine human connection that transcended social boundaries. Her pictures showed royalty enjoying simple pleasures with obvious delight, townspeople sharing their authentic selves with confidence and pride, and moments of laughter that looked completely natural and unguarded. The ice cream itself became a vehicle for deeper cultural exchange as discussions ranged from traditional British flavors to regional variations found throughout the Commonwealth. Margaret's knowledge of ice cream history and technique impressed visitors who had experienced countless elaborate desserts, but rarely encountered such passionate dedication to simple perfection. Mayor Davidson, who had been practically vibrating with nervous energy since the visit was announced, found himself engaged in substantive conversations about rural development strategies and sustainable tourism initiatives. The royal family's knowledge of these issues and their genuine interest in local solutions surprised him and elevated their discussion far beyond ceremonial pleasantries. Mrs. Henderson, emboldened by the informal atmosphere, shared stories about the town's history during wartime, when the parlor had served as an informal community center where families gathered to share news and support each other through difficult times. Her vivid memories brought tears to several eyes and demonstrated the deep roots that connected current residents to generations of Sea Haven families. Billy Fletcher's infectious enthusiasm reached new heights when he was invited to demonstrate proper ice cream serving techniques for the royal visitors. His serious concentration and careful explanations of optimal scooping angles and cone-filling procedures provided moments of pure joy that reminded everyone present of childhood pleasures that transcended all social boundaries. The conversation gradually expanded to include broader topics about preserving traditional skills and supporting rural communities in an increasingly globalized economy. Margaret discovered that her visitors possessed deep knowledge about these challenges and genuine commitment to finding practical solutions that could help communities like Sea Haven maintain their viability and character. Sarah surprised herself by expressing opinions about rural development and small business challenges with confidence and insight that impressed not only the royal visitors, but also her mother, who realized that her daughter had been thinking seriously about these issues during her time away from home. The discussion revealed Sarah's potential to become an advocate for coastal communities beyond Sea Haven. The natural beauty of the coastal setting provided a stunning backdrop for the extended visit as afternoon sunlight streamed through the parlor's windows and highlighted the scenic harbor views that served as a constant reminder of why this community had drawn settlers for generations. The royals commented repeatedly on the remarkable natural setting and its importance for both community identity and tourism potential. Local children, initially shy in the presence of such distinguished visitors, gradually warmed up as they observed the genuine friendliness and interest displayed by the royal family. Soon they were chattering about school projects, local sports teams, and their own dreams for the future, providing insights into the next generation's perspectives on life in coastal communities. The extended visit created opportunities for discussing practical challenges facing small businesses like the Sweet Breeze, from seasonal employment fluctuations to competition from large chain establishments. The royal family's questions revealed sophisticated understanding of these issues and genuine interest in hearing grassroots perspectives on potential solutions. Margaret began to understand that this visit represented more than ceremonial recognition of her business. It was part of a larger effort to understand and support the authentic character of British coastal communities, and her parlor had been selected as an example of the kind of family enterprise that formed the backbone of these resilient settlements. The media coverage, which Margaret had dreaded as potentially invasive and disruptive, proved to be respectful and focused on celebrating the positive aspects of community life rather than seeking controversy or dramatic angles. Reporters seemed genuinely charmed by the authentic interactions they witnessed and the obvious mutual pleasure shared by all participants. As the afternoon progressed, Margaret realized that the visit was creating lasting connections that would extend far beyond this single day. Plans were discussed for future communications, potential support for community development initiatives, and ways that Sea Haven's example might inform broader policies affecting coastal communities throughout the region. The economic impact of the visit was already becoming apparent as visitors who had come to witness the royal stop discovered Sea Haven's other attractions and began making plans to return with families and friends. Local businesses reported increased interest and several inquiries about accommodations for future visits. Thomas observed the proceedings with quiet satisfaction, recognizing that this extraordinary day was validating everything he had always believed about his community's worth and potential. The respect and interest shown by such distinguished visitors confirmed that Sea Haven possessed qualities that deserved recognition and support. The parlor's atmosphere had become so relaxed and natural that it was difficult to remember this was supposed to be a formal royal visit rather than a gathering of friends sharing ice cream and conversation on a beautiful September afternoon. This transformation exceeded everyone's expectations and created memories that would be treasured by all participants for the rest of their lives. The royal family's departure from the Sweet Breeze ice cream parlor carried an emotional weight that surprised everyone involved. What should have been a simple conclusion to an official visit had become something far more meaningful, and saying goodbye felt like parting from friends rather than ending a ceremonial obligation. Before leaving, the royal visitors made commitments that extended far beyond polite pleasantries. They promised to maintain contact with Margaret and her family, expressed genuine interest in following the parlor's continued success, and discuss specific ways that their visit might help promote Sea Haven as a destination worthy of broader recognition and support. Margaret found herself overwhelmed by gratitude and emotion as she watched the convoy prepare for departure. The experience had exceeded her wildest dreams while simultaneously feeling completely natural and appropriate. She had shared her life's work with people who genuinely appreciated its value, and that recognition meant more than any amount of publicity or commercial success could provide. The crowd that had gathered to witness history began to disperse slowly, with many lingering to share their own observations and excitement about what they had experienced. The day had become a community celebration that would be remembered and retold for generations, creating shared memories that strengthened bonds between neighbors and reinforced collective pride in their hometown. Sarah stood beside her mother as they waved farewell to their distinguished guests, both women experiencing a mixture of exhaustion, exhilaration, and profound satisfaction. The day had tested every aspect of their hospitality and business skills while revealing strengths and capabilities they had not fully recognized in themselves. Thomas quietly began the process of returning the parlor to its normal configuration, though both he and Margaret understood that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The visit had changed their perspective on their own establishment and their place within the broader community in ways that would continue to influence their decisions and aspirations. The media coverage that followed the visit exceeded all expectations, with newspapers, television programs, and online publications featuring stories about the Sweet Breeze ice cream parlor and its royal visitors. The coverage emphasized the authentic charm of small coastal communities and the importance of supporting family businesses that preserve traditional skills and values. Within days of the visit, the parlor began receiving inquiries from potential visitors who had read about the royal stop and wanted to experience the same ice cream and hospitality for themselves. Margaret found herself booking reservations for the following summer and fielding questions about shipping ice cream to customers throughout the country. The economic impact extended throughout Sea Haven as increased interest in the town led to inquiries about accommodations, restaurants, and other local attractions. Mayor Davidson reported that tourism inquiries had increased dramatically, with many potential visitors specifically mentioning the royal visit as their introduction to the community. Sarah discovered that the confidence and communication skills she had demonstrated during the royal visit were opening unexpected opportunities. She was invited to speak at a regional conference about small business challenges, contacted by a tourism organization interested in her perspectives on rural development, and approached by several media outlets seeking follow-up interviews. Margaret began receiving requests for her ice cream recipes from food publications and culinary professionals who had been impressed by the coverage of her special flavors created for the royal visit. While she guarded her secret techniques carefully, she found ways to share her passion for quality ingredients and traditional methods with a broader audience. The parlor's daily routine gradually returned to normal, though with subtle changes that reflected their new status as a recognized destination rather than simply a local business. Regular customers shared in the excitement and took pride in their association with an establishment that had earned royal approval. Billy Fletcher became something of a local celebrity after photographs of his earnest ice cream demonstrations appeared in national publications. His newfound fame did nothing to diminish his enthusiasm for his self-appointed role as the parlor's unofficial ambassador and ice cream construction consultant. Mrs. Henderson framed the newspaper articles about the royal visit and created a small display in her front window, becoming the town's unofficial historian for preserving and sharing memories of their extraordinary day. Her detailed accounts of the visit helped ensure that future generations would understand the significance of what had occurred. The relationships formed during the royal visit continued to develop through correspondence and occasional communications that kept Sea Haven connected to broader discussions about rural development and small business support. Margaret felt honored to represent not just her own establishment, but small coastal communities throughout the region. 6 months after the royal visit, Margaret received an invitation to attend a reception in London celebrating small business achievements and rural community development. The invitation specifically mentioned her ice cream parlor's role in demonstrating the vitality and potential of coastal enterprises, confirming that their brief encounter had indeed created lasting connections. Sarah made the decision to remain in Sea Haven permanently, recognizing that the opportunities emerging from their new visibility offered exciting possibilities for expanding their business while maintaining its essential character. She began developing plans for seasonal expansions and community events that could build on the foundation of recognition they had achieved. The Sweet Breeze Ice Cream Parlor's guest book which had always contained mostly local signatures and seasonal visitor comments, now included entries from people who traveled specifically to experience the establishment that had hosted royalty. These visitors often mentioned the authentic charm and genuine hospitality that had been highlighted in the media coverage. Thomas continued his quiet work of maintaining and improving their facilities, but now with the satisfaction of knowing that his efforts contributed to an establishment that had earned recognition far beyond their local community. His practical skills and steady presence had provided crucial support during their moment in the spotlight. Margaret often reflected on how a single telephone call had transformed their lives, while simultaneously revealing that their small business had always possessed qualities worthy of recognition and celebration. The royal visit had not changed who they were, but had illuminated the value of what they had been doing all along. The pier where the Sweet Breeze ice cream parlor sat continued to face the eternal ocean, its wooden posts still weathered by salt spray and time. But now it also hosted an establishment that had been touched by history, visited by royalty, and recognized as an authentic representative of the best qualities found in Britain's coastal communities. As each sunset painted the sky in familiar colors and each tide brought its ancient rhythm to their shore, Margaret understood that their extraordinary day had become part of Sea Haven's permanent story. The royal visit would be remembered not as an isolated event, but as recognition of the enduring value found in simple excellence, genuine hospitality, and the timeless pleasure of sharing homemade ice cream with people who appreciate its honest goodness.